All right, so we're here with the CEO of Skar Audio, Kevin Schlenker. My name's Peter Tragos. I'm a lawyer in Clearwater, Florida, personal injury, criminal defense firm. I have a podcast. I came here to tour Skar Audio's facility and interview Kevin because we, in our podcast, are trying to get the perspective of all different kinds of entrepreneurs. And I've known Kevin for a while. We actually met through one of his mentors that he mentioned earlier in the interview that we'll probably circle back and talk about again, Elliot Rubinson. And we've known each other for a long time. I've known him since he was a high school kid. Always seemed like a guy that was going to be successful. I didn't know what, or with what, I should say. And it just so happens that it happened with a car audio company, building speakers, selling them. And we're talking about the principles that he applies to his business that I personally think, even in my field as the legal business, which is very special, specific field, you can apply it to that and any other entrepreneur. He's a young guy. What are you, 26 years old?
27.
27 years old, young guy doing multi-million dollars a year on Forbes 30 under 30 list, on everything you could be on. But in reality, he's a guy that is an entrepreneur with a lot for all of us to learn from. And we're going to jump into some more of the principles that we've already been talking about. So when we talk about principles of building a business, we've already talked about, customer service, making sure your customers are happy, being all in, which really means taking steps that other people aren't willing to step, dropping out of college, which is not necessarily something I would advise everybody to do. But, and he already talked about,
I wouldn't as well, just for the record.
Overcoming that, because you drop out of college and when you're trying to build capital, which I'd like to get in more specifically, when you're trying to build capital, that's something you've got to overcome. Like, I went to college and I dropped out of college, but I want you to give me a bunch of money to start a company.
Right.
And they're thinking, well, how do I know you're not going to quit on this company?
Right.
So why don't you explain how you actually tried to build some of that capital and what worked and what didn't work through that process?
Sure. And thanks again for having me on today, Peter.
Absolutely.
There's a wealth of information out there, and I'm always trying to learn. So, I feel like doing this podcast with you and being able to sit down and just share that information from what I've learned up to this point and so many years to come. Like you said, meeting through Elliot, somebody super successful, in the music business, similar to mine. I manufacture and distribute and sell speakers. He did that with musical instruments. Got to learn a lot from him and just being able to kind of share that with the world and always be learning and bouncing ideas off you as an attorney and just completely different area of business, but a business owner. At the end of the day, you're still a business owner. And so I'll get to your question here in a second, but just always learning from other people is super valuable. So
and he's always been willing to be a mentor for other people as well, older or younger.
I love talking business, yes.
And there's a lot of people probably older than you that could learn a lot from you that are starting their own business or coming out of a field that they don't want to work in anymore and learning how to start a business. And he's a wealth of information because he's been doing it for so long.
And from some of those older people, learning the slower, methodical way to do business is super valuable as well, because I am an all-in 24/7, as a lot of other young entrepreneurs probably are, just hustle and bustle kind of guy.
Right.
But taking a step back and looking at the grand picture sometimes is, I think, one of the most valuable things I've learned from older entrepreneurs. So It goes both ways, 100%.
Absolutely.
But as far as the capital thing goes, capital for an entrepreneur starting a business is the hardest part, hands down. All the other things that come usually after you've raised capital, employees, other topics we've already touched on briefly. But raising capital, I didn't raise a lot of capital in the beginning, to be honest with you. I had a very close family friend by the name of Mr. Racklin, huge credit, still a huge backer in my business. Just a family friend, an angel loan. It was a $7,000 loan. I don't know if I put that on the record before. Bought the first 100 subwoofers that Skar Audio ever made, and the rest is history from there. That loan, I had to do some persuading with him, to get that money.
Sure.
And
it doesn't sound like a lot now,
didn't sell quick.
But back then, it's a ton of money to ask for.
I was in college still,
I mean, that's a ton of money to ask somebody for.
Today,
think about it now. If
right,
somebody's asking you to write a $7,000 check and they've never done anything before, that's
I don't even know if I could personally write the check myself.
Right. I mean, that's a tough thing to do, is really put your trust in somebody. So how did you sell him on it? What? It wasn't just because of, hey, I'm Kevin, please give me some money. Did you have to come up with some pro forma or give him an idea of what you were going to build with the business? What did you bring to the table?
I couldn't even tell you.
Did you go to China before?
No.
Okay.
So I was actually going to China shortly after that. But
did you have that plan?
I didn't even have that plan
okay.
yet. That's how crazy it was.
So he just had some trust.
He believed in me, yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to say. So I knew you as a high school kid. He knew you.
And you knew me prior to this conversation with him.
Right. So then maybe he just kind of saw something and was willing to take a bet on it.
I hope so.
Okay. All right. So
he took a bet on me, absolutely.
And once you built that, how did you come back to the table and build more capital?
Okay. That's so. the $7,000 was a belief in me, and then taking that belief and then not going right back to him for more capital.
Right.
And I think that would also be my advice to anybody is if you get a little bit of angel funding, angel loans, money from family, that's what typically an angel debt is. Run with it. Don't go right back to that person and ask for more money. I think a lot of people have trouble raising money because they often either oversell or try and raise too much without proving themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I took the $7,000, sold 100 speakers. I bought more speakers, obviously, kept selling those speakers, but I did it on personal credit cards. I used student college debt at the time. I used student loans to build a business. I really did. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of complication around it. I mean, it's personal credit cards, student loans, and this initial $7,000
because you're taking the bet on yourself at that point. This guy's giving you $7,000, that he's taking a bet on you. It probably shows something too that you're willing to bet it on yourself with this credit card debt, the student loan debt, because that's going to come back on you.
Correct.
So you basically made an investment in yourself as well.
Right. And then shortly after that, then I allowed myself to start saying, okay, I need to take a step back. We're starting to sell a lot of product now. A lot of money is starting to be involved. I need to bring other people on board. And this kind of goes back to the point of I didn't go right back to Mr. Racklin. I went to other friends and family and what I would consider my seed round of capital. And typically in capital, venture capital, you'll have an angel. Then you'll have an official seed round per se. Then you'll go into a Series A, B, C, and so on and so forth. Now, for me, Mr. Racklin was my seed. After that was, or my angel. Then after that was the seed round. That was my grandparents, an uncle, so on and so forth. Sure. And that round then got a little bit larger, but that's after 2.5 years. I used personal capital and a very small angel loan to get to year 2.5. Mm-hmm. And then from there, yes, then we started getting into some bigger numbers. I think I still personally think it was a shoestring budget. Yeah. I think I had raised $150,000 at year 2.5, but we were doing $1 million a year. So,
and at that point, that's what you use to sell the capital for, is they see your business model, they see numbers, they see what's coming in.
Sales,
right. 100%. At that point, when you're showing them the sales, it's a lot easier to get capital. But
I guess with a grain of salt, right?
I should say a lot easier than when you first drop out of college and are asking people for money, which is why because
I had dropped out at this point, so that's why it almost got even harder. I would say you're now trying to convince family and friends, who, if they have some extent of money, they're also successful and they have lived the American dream per se. So they've either had a college.
And as shocking as it is, no matter how much money somebody has, they still don't like giving it away, right?
They don't, and they want to believe. If you have a college degree, it's a little easier to sell.
Absolutely, which in today's day and age is a whole other discussion. It's crazy, but. So one of the other things, so you're building this capital. Is there anything else you want to get into about the capital building?
I think so. Yeah. So once I raised a little bit, what I would consider at the time, I was 21, 22 years old, having got a check, multiple checks for $50,000, getting to $150,000. That was a lot of money to me. A lot of liquid cash in the bank, and I was fired up. And for I think a 3-week to a month and a half span, I was like, I've got cash in the bank, and I'm not going to be chasing my tail. And a lot of entrepreneurs, I'm sure watching this, can relate to being very tight all the time. And for that month and a half, I felt as soon as I started using that capital to build a business, I was back in the rut of this is going awesome, but I need more capital.
Right.
And again, I didn't go raise it right away, but you start to realize, okay, if I can prove my sales and I can prove that I'm cash flow positive and that I'm running lean and focused on the business and not wasting money, I love when I hear the term tax write-offs, don't spend money, build a business, sell product, and focus. And after I started realizing if I could keep doing that, I could raise more money, then I started going back to some of the initial seed investors and angel lenders. And the amount started getting into the $500,000 more consistently.
And I think that's interesting because anybody can spend money, right? Anybody can smash marketing or have 100 employees or whatever, have a bigger facility that you don't need. But I think it shows a lot more to investors when you're talking about being tight, spending that dollar like it's your dollar. Even though somebody gave it to you or as an investment, spending every dollar the way that you think is the best use of that dollar probably helps a lot when you go back to them and ask for more capital.
100%.
Yeah, I would think you're having to sell how you're using that money and they want to see what you're doing with it.
Right. The two biggest selling points of raising capital, in my opinion, are, and I learned a lot of this, from Mark, my step-uncle that I mentioned earlier, one of the two huge mentors in my life. Mark's raised hundreds of millions of dollars. But man, when I talk to him and the passion he instilled upon me and what I try and relay when I raise money is that you got to make the person believe in you because as much as you could sell them on the idea and they could understand the idea, half the time they're not going to understand the idea. And when you leave that office, they need to remember who you are.
Yep.
And if it's not family, yes, family will, because they give you the time of day for having that blood link with you. They're going to forget about you. And it's hard-earned dollars that people
You're
are
not the only person asking them for money, right?
Not,
I mean, that's what it really comes down to is just like...
And why take it out of a 401k or in the market when it's earning 11 to 16% a year? They're doing it because they believe in you.
Sure. And I think just like...
No matter what level you're at.
With the products that we talked about, it's not necessarily you have to be the best or be better than somebody else, but you just have to make it something that they believe in and something that they want to deal with and something they want to invest in is really you. And I think part of your background with, dealing with the tech and the media part of it is something that they probably see you can apply to any business. And this is the one that you've chosen to apply it to so that they probably believe it's going to be successful. And so when we talk about another one of the principles being all in, we mentioned your China trip. So why don't you tell us, how did that actually happen? You said it was a one-way ticket. How'd you pay for the ticket? What was your plan when you got there? And how did that plan kind of come into fruition?
So after getting the first check and getting some seed money, I said, okay, I need to put this to work now.
Sure.
And I was not about to risk the only $7,000 I had with a factory that may never send me products. So I bought a plane ticket one way, went over there. Via Alibaba, really, there was no special connection to anybody. I had no connections over there, obviously. So I set up about 10 to 15 appointments with different speaker manufacturers in China in the Jiashan district, which is right outside, about an hour outside of Shanghai.
Did they care about your sales or anything like that, or was it easy to get
meetings with them? They knew I was new.
Okay.
It was, when you're also dealing with manufacturers in China, you're going to have a lot of low-level manufacturers, a lot of small business type manufacturers that are there to get by. And I'm not saying there's an issue with that, but you're not going to get the best product as you want for your business. Okay. You want to deal with the big players just like most businesses. Sure. So again, you have to sell yourself. You're not raising money this time, but you're selling yourself like, hey, I want you to give me the time of day to make, when these guys are making 15, 50,000 speakers at a time every single day, 10, 20 containers of product.
They're taking a risk on you too, because if they're making your speakers, they're not making somebody else's.
They're taking a lot of time to make 100 speakers for me.
Right, exactly.
And so out of those 15 meetings, I had one that went really well. A couple weeks in, and that's finally when I felt comfortable enough to come back to the U.S. and the rest was done. I mean, I did go back to, and I have been back to China many times since then, but a lot of it's done now via communication because we have great trust in each other, and that's been now a 7-8 year relationship.
Why did you think it was important to actually go there and not just handle the whole thing remotely?
Oh, getting burned initially, for capital reasons. I knew there wasn't going to be more money coming in if I lost the first chunk without care. So I treated it like my own and went over there. I really think that's the main reason.
Okay. And is that something somebody told you to do, or did you come up with that on your own, or how did you know that you were going to get, or that the burning potential was there in China, and then how did you actually take the step to do it?
That's a good question. I mean, I feel like just with my personality, I wanted to go see it. I wanted to see how factories work. I thought it was fascinating. Every time I see a picture online, growing up, I'm like, that is so cool seeing things be made. Whether I was watching the History Channel and the Men Who Built America, or the Discovery Channel and the different shows about business on there, just seeing things getting made, I always thought was fascinating. So that was, along with not losing the capital, a huge driver of pushing me to actually physically fly there.
Sure. So when we talk about...
And highly recommend it for any American to see the manufacturing process in China. Highly recommend the experience.
Right. And again, we've talked about how the made in China thing can be a misnomer, so you should go there and actually see what it's like and see what the whole business aspect of it is like. And I always feel like meeting somebody you're going to work with does a lot when you're starting to deal with problems, or when you're starting to deal with issues that you have. You have somebody you can call that you've actually met that knows who you are, and you know who they are, and you're real people, especially in today's day and age, right? So,
and it's a great relation. I mean, China, a lot of people have a misconception about China, and I don't know if it's the political news recently with all the tariffs, or it's just the way Americans think now, but there is great. I mean, look at the iPhone, and Apple, one of the most valuable companies in the world, makes a product that nearly half the population in the U.S. uses, and it's a fantastic product that is manufactured in China. Yes, it is designed here, but there is great relationships in China. It is a global economy that we live in, so to not take advantage of what people might say is high quality. Yes, there are high quality products made in China. There's no problem with China.
And every entrepreneur and business owner has to make that decision on their own. But I think
you're naive if you're not open-minded to it.
I agree, and I think that's something that's really been missed today in starting your business is the political climate may push you in a direction that's not right for your business.
100%.
So at least going out there, and even if you were to come back and said, I'm going to manufacture in the U.S., at least you know.
Yes.
You've taken that step, you've crossed that option off, whatever it is. I think that's really good advice to actually take the leap to go all in a way that I'm going to fly across the world to see what it's like over there, to see if that works for my business. So what would you say are some of the keys that make Skar Audio different from other speaker companies?
Oh, geez.
The highlights,
The highlights. I mean, there's a couple of topics that we like to focus around here, and our mission statement is always about the customer. Just always focusing on the customer and then translating that into the parts of the business. So actually, from a business point of view, some of the things we like to focus on are customer service. That's huge. Just, in the world of Amazon and people wanting instant gratification, I say to my guys, every time we have a meeting, we got to give them instant gratification.
Sure.
And they are always right. And if we start there and work our way backwards, knowing they're always right, how can we take care of them? Like whether it's returns and shipping and just like transit times outbound, call wait times, email response times, the different channel response times. If you start at the forefront of let's treat the customer the best we can, and they're always right, and then all of those things I just mentioned and stem backwards, you're going to hit every little finite detail you need to make sure that you're treating them perfectly.
Sure, and I think
that's just one.
I think that the customer's always right is easy to say, and it's been said for a long time. But with today's day and age, that's a lot harder than it used to be.
And honestly, I know my customers are watching this. They may not always be right, but that doesn't matter.
Right.
In my
I guess
opinion,
the customer's always right is probably not the right comment. The point is the customer should feel valued.
Yes.
That's the point. Like
100%.
if they can be wrong, everybody's wrong once in a while, but they should be valued even if they're wrong or asking for something you can't do. Being respectful goes a long way. Or like you said, we toured this facility. We went through where you fix some of the warranty stuff, where people send back if something blew within the 2 years or whatever it was. Like you said, I don't know everything about your business, but you're saying we just fix it and we fix it, or we send them a brand new one, and we deal with them in a way that we would want to be dealt with, right? When you buy a product, you expect it to work. If it doesn't work and it's within the warranty, you fix it, no questions asked, or you send a new one back out to them. And I think that goes a long way with any business. I know, my wife and I shop places that it's easier to return stuff. Right. Because if it's not working, you got to return it. You're an attorney.
You're building a brand. When you're building a brand, you're building a reputation.
And what do you want people to associate with that brand, right? What do you want them to associate with that brand? And customer service, I think, is one of the best ways to go, because especially in a company where, like ours is the legal field or yours speakers, there's lots of them. There's lots of lawyers, especially in Florida. There's lots of speakers all around the country
and the world. But how do you stand out, right? And you do stand out.
Exactly.
You're part of a very reputable firm because you stand out.
And I think it's important to step back and look at your business in a way as an entrepreneur of how am I going to stick out? It's always easy to, I shouldn't say easy. Everybody's go-to is I want to invent this product that doesn't exist, that's a gap in the market that everybody's going to want to buy. But that's not always as easy as it sounds. And coming up with a company and doing it a better way than other companies do it usually can start with customer satisfaction.
Sure.
So what other principles do you guys try to institute?
And just the last thing I want to touch on there is I think it takes 10 years to build a reputation and only 60 seconds to lose it.
Sure. Yeah.
So
if
that's our motto here.
Yeah.
The other principles from a business point of view are, ironically, a lot of them, fall back on customer service in some way, whether it's shipping times. But I try to, with our business, and I think where we're really excelling with Skar is, first the products, and manufacturing the highest quality, best sounding as far as speakers go, or best performance with amplifiers, etc. The best product possible.
Sure.
Once you have a solid product, yes, you can expand the line over the years. Then you have to look at your processes as a business. What can we do better than these other manufacturers? Because there's so many of our competitors, and I'm not going to get into names, but, different business models. They're in distribution models. The landscape is changing. We've talked about that. It's going online. Everything's online. You go to Amazon, you want great customer service. Returns are easy. How can I bring those things to my customer and do it better than all of my competitors for my particular niche? So, that is a huge principle for us, is just doing things better. And
not getting comfortable in the way that you do it. That's working, right? Because you've been successful over the years. You're growing every year. It would be easy to get comfortable in how you're doing things, but instead you step back and say, how can I do it better? Meaning, don't get stuck in the way that I'm doing it now, because as things change, which you've talked about a lot, everything's always ever changing. Be ready to change and
Right.
be willing to change, because change is hard, especially when you're successful. It's hard to tell somebody to do something different, but it seems like that's a principle of Skar, is you're willing to change no matter what if it's going to make your company better.
Right.
I mean, I'll
constantly,
customers.
a good example is I'll be out in the warehouse with my guys packing orders, and I do that, and I learned this quality from Mark with, listening on phone calls for customer support. He used to do it in his days of diapers.com. And I took that to heart. He was in his car making a phone call to a customer that left a negative review on the site. And that stuck. I mean, I think I was probably 12 years old at the time, but the fact that, I saw how big his business was at a young age and how many employees he had. And then on the drive home, taking his time to call this one customer over maybe a diaper review.
Yeah.
I was like, that's silly.
Yeah.
But in the grand scheme of things, it's like going back to what I was talking about, packing orders in the warehouse with my guys or listening in on phone calls. It's being hands-on, being nimble enough and lean enough to experience so you can change like that.
Sure.
Whether it's using different shipping carriers or packaging products differently, which is one thing we talked about earlier. Yeah. We've been able to really excel in product categories of car stereo specifically because we've adapted and just being, for instance, hands-on in the warehouse, seeing where things get broken. If you're ordering a 120-pound speaker box, you don't want it arriving damaged.
So, and that's really important. So for entrepreneurs that are starting a company, you don't think about like if you're we'll use yours for an example. You're thinking about a car speaker, you're thinking about performance, you're thinking about the way that it looks, you're thinking about making it cool, you're thinking about something that people want. But something that can make you better than other companies is something as simple as packaging and shipping.
Yep.
And that's, if you don't go through the whole process, if you're not in the warehouse seeing the guys do it, if you're not listening to the customer complaints or any phone call that you guys have, we record ours and can listen back to how people deal with clients and what went wrong. If
I'm going to write that down.
Seriously, you record things, and of course you have to tell them you're recording it. Of course. Yeah. But I'm just saying,
conversation.
It can really help, dealing with the clients that, maybe somebody wasn't as nice to them at the office, or coaching your employees and things like that. But you have to know your process of your business from beginning to end. And like you said, you're a tech guy, you're kind of a CEO type of guy that likes to be at the top dealing with everything. But you need to go down to every level, even if it's something that's not your expertise, like picking up a box or taping a box or whatever, dealing with the orders, and become an expert at it so that you can help your employees be better at what they do.
Right.
So that's a really important thing for an entrepreneur, that
Never
you learn along the way.
Never be too good, quote unquote, to get involved, because it really, that's one of the things that irks me, is when you talk to CEOs or business owners that are like too high and mighty to get down in the dirt. It's never dirt. It's your company. It's your baby. It's always going to be your baby. And when you stop caring, that's when you lose. That's when you lose market share, and that's when you go out of business.
Yeah, I mean, I stapled papers and hole punch papers and put them in binders for my dad, at our office, doing every part of it so that you understand what somebody's going through. And when they say, I can't do that. Like,
or you have a paralegal that's doing it wrong, you can catch them doing it wrong,
right?
I
know you can do it because I did it, and I know how to do it. I'm not saying it's easy, but I know how to do it, and you can do it this way. And I think that's really important, like how you're talking about too, is filling the orders and being lean with people that you can trust in the warehouse that are doing it the right way. And if they're not, you can have a conversation with them about it.
Right.
I think that's really important. So any other principles or thoughts that you think that make Skar Audio kind of stick out as a better speaker company that we can kind of end on now?
Not per se principles. I know I got a little off topic with talking about customer service, and maybe some people want to hear more about the business side of things and scaling a business quickly, and the numbers, some of the big, more exciting numbers that we haven't, been able to dive into yet.
Sure. Explain to us how you scale the business. Because that's something that scaling a business is different depending on what business type that you're in. So when you're talking about selling widgets, basically, which is what you do, which can go across the whole landscape of sales, how do you scale something like that? And what's scaling too fast versus too slow? How do you deal with stuff like that?
Okay, right. So I hit a bottleneck in about year 4. Once we started getting a track record as a very minor brand in the space, we were doing about $3.5 million in sales. My processes, and this is also a very huge piece of advice for anybody building a business, is having good processes in place. I didn't have any at that point in time. And when I started feeling like we got some traction and we started getting larger purchase orders and more volume going through the doors, it became a huge issue when I couldn't get them out. And, and I didn't have enough employees. And then when you go to start hiring and you don't have processes, well, what do you teach your employees?
Yeah.
So we figured that out quickly. But again, as an entrepreneur, you're going to be spending 20 hours a day. Don't ever think you're not going to be. But that's part of the love. You love doing that. You're all hands on. You'll get the orders out. And then on the weekends, you'll go in and make better processes when things quiet down. That's how I was able to scale from doing $3.5 million 4 years ago to now $12 million last year, hopefully 20 to 25 million this year and beyond. I have guys come in with me on the weekends. You have to have good people as well. It's not just about yourself, and listen to them. But
talk about all the things that go into that. So when you go from 2 million to 12 million or 12 million to 25 million, what changes specifically like in your day-to-day? Like you're showing me your warehouse space now. What did it used to look like and what's it going to look like 5 years from now?
So in Orlando, the year I dropped out of college, I got a little 1,200 square foot warehouse downtown.
Probably wasn't little when you got it, right? You were like,
no, I was excited, man. I had an office.
How am I ever going to fill this space?
I had a mailing address and a phone number.
That's awesome.
That wasn't a self-forwarded number, so that was exciting.
Right.
But yeah, so we did that for a 16th month stretch, and then I decided that it was time to. I'd already dropped out at this point. I was all in.
Right.
That warehouse got full pretty quick. Just trying to move as much product as possible, filled up, and I didn't have any connection to Orlando, so 1,200 square feet. Spent the time there, moved out. Came back to Tampa, where I'm from. I was over in a part of town called Brandon, and got a 5,500.
Brandon, where Amazon is.
Yeah, right.
A little town called Brandon,
right
where
outside
Amazon now is.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we got a 5,500 square foot warehouse there, that was kind of like I almost think more of an eye opener because I had a storage unit before the first space. So 5,500 square feet was a lot, and the lease that came with it, and the price point also was a lot.
Right.
I'm still very young at this point. Still young today. I've gotten more successful to dealing with those numbers though.
Right.
But anyway, the 5,500 square foot warehouse was a 2.5 year lease that carried us up to about $3 million in sales. Had to move on obviously to a larger building. I mean, not everybody will, depending on what business you're in or how fast you want to grow or what point you become comfortable in life. Like for me, I'm all business. I love business. I never want to stop growing. And my plan with Skar is to build it into a multi-$100 million company. If that's not your goal, that's also fine. But with me and after that,
a lot of people can be really profitable with smaller companies.
Absolutely.
Making $2 million a year, sometimes you can make more money than somebody that has a $100 million a year company.
Yeah,
right?
if you're running a $100 million company and losing money, or you're running $1 million company.
And a lot of them do. I mean, how many companies go under that were a $100 million company the year before?
Right.
So that's the point, is being smart and knowing kind of when that jump is, which mentors can help a lot with.
Right.
Am I jumping too fast? Am I jumping too slow? Am I smashing in this space and actually losing money because I don't want to pay more for rent in a bigger facility? So you kind of make those decisions as you go. What are you in now?
And those were, so we're in 17,000, a little over 17,000 square feet now. Those were gradual steps for me. I didn't want to lose a lot of money in the beginning. I was using other people's money, close family and friends.
Sure.
Nobody ever wants to lose money, so that's not where I'm going with this. But I took gradual steps to make sure that cash flow was good, and make sure that we were profitable. No matter how small that was at the time. But moving on after that building, I knew that I was ready to accelerate. We had 2 years where there was very minimal profits after that, moving into our larger facility. All of that was expected. It wasn't a bad thing.
You were building at that point.
Right. But you also have to get comfortable. It took me 4 or 5 years to say, hey, I have a brand now. I have a business. What they say about making it past year 5 in business is so important. I mean, I think if that stress you feel getting past year 5, things starting to brighten up a little bit.
Right.
But it is very hard in the beginning. And so I read all of that. I constantly am on Business Insider and those other online places and trying to learn and, just digesting that. If I can make it past year 5 and not blow through a lot of money, then I could start accelerating. And that's kind of where we're at now, going back to your question of what we're in now. So we're in 17,500 square feet now here in Tampa. Been here for almost 5 years exactly, actually. And now the brand is starting to take that accelerated growth. It wasn't the first year we moved in here, but doing 12.5 million in sales last year. Conservatively, I'm not going to go into too many numbers here, but I would like to say that when we move out of here in a couple months' time, that we're going to be going to 40 to 80,000 square feet. Shortly after that, we'll be opening
because now
a West
the warehouse
Coast
is packed.
Yes,
it's packed in there. We walked through it, and you're saying it's even a downtime because stuff's flying off the shelf right now.
Right, super busy, not down, but we're down on inventory.
Right,
we
exactly.
That's
stock. As packed as the warehouse is, I can't believe that's down on inventory. But so you're saying you're basically growing out of this space now, and you're going to triple or quadruple or quintuple the space that you're in now.
And then open a West Coast warehouse.
Right. Okay.
And raise more money. I mean, and now that's where it gets fun for me is seeing some of the people I've been able to learn from.
Right.
Of course, everybody loves big numbers, right? And so now that I feel like I can do it stably and, like I said, open a second warehouse on the other side of the country, know the demand is that, that's exciting that people want the product that badly, that I am fortunate enough to be able to provide that experience and service for them.
It's something to be proud of. It's definitely not something to apologize about. It's something to be proud of. And
American dream's alive, put it that way.
And then that's the point is, I think that going through these, I won't even call them growing pains, but these growth spurts is something that other people are going to ask you about and are going to learn about, coming to you for advice on being an entrepreneur and scaling a business like this, because not a lot of people know how to do it, right? I mean, and
that goes back to the mentorship, though. I mean, I would not be where I am without Elliot or Mark.
Important.
I mean, being able to learn from somebody that has raised hundreds of millions of dollars is not somebody everybody gets to do. And I mean, I do take a lot of respect, and I have a lot of admiration for him spending the time to teach me that, because I would not be able to get past, say, maybe on my own inhibitions or experience, I could grow Skar to 10 million, let's say.
Sure.
That might be my cap. Without that mentorship, I would not think about building a $100 million company.
Right.
You know,
that it's even possible.
Exactly.
Right. Well, dude, I really appreciate this. That was awesome, man.
Yeah, man.
It was
appreciate
fun.
you.
Yeah, we'll do it
Thank
again.
You, definitely.
All right.
Thank you.
So why don't you hit that